Hello, everybody, and welcome to Divorce the First 6 Months. I'm your host, Peter Maestri. Today, we have the pleasure of interviewing Stephane Jutras. He is a podcaster, a father, and a businessman. And the one thing I want to let you know about him is that he's got two kids, which are a little older, and he'll tell you how old they are. And he's been divorced for 2 years and then separated for a little while over that. So, Stefan, welcome for being to the show and for being a yes to this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Definitely a pleasure.
Yeah, and for those of you that don't know, he does have a podcast. It's called the Divorce Dad Diaries, which I stalked, and that's how we met. And then, as a
hmm
result of being on his show, we created him being on ours. So, Stefan, if you can walk us through or let us know, what was your first 6 months like?
Um, Actually, the first time you asked when we talked about coming on a show, and the first time I thought about it, uh, I couldn't really kind of put my mind on just 1 6 months. I had many 6 months. I think I could say probably three main ones
Hmm.
that really are completely different. And I was thinking, should I pick one? But I think it's important to mention them. I mean, my first 6 months was after that we decided to separate. So that was one of the key moments. And the 6 months after that, a lot of things happened. My second one was more, I guess, when we finally came up with an agreement. And the 6 months after that, too, was, again, completely different on that front. And my last one was the first 6 months after the divorce, when finally everything was final. So, so my first 6 months when we decided to separate, uh, I mean, before you actually, I had a conversation with my wife at the time, and we sat down and we knew, like, over the years a lot of things were not going that great, and it was kind of a common agreement between the two of us that I think the best way going forward would be to separate. And it was a tough moment. A lot of thought about it. It was kind of friendly, I would say, and we kind of agreed on how to go forward, and regarding the house, regarding the money, regarding the kids, and everything else. So I have to say, I was sad, but at the same time, I was and scared too. It's a scary moment to actually sit down, and I mean, probably one of the biggest decisions in your life. And but I was looking forward to what would come after that. So after that, like at the beginning, obviously, once we decided the first time to sit down with the kids and tell the kids, which was also a tough moment for us. And honestly, I mean, the kids, I didn't know what to expect, and that's the thing. I think at that point is I was trying to figure out a bit how that would go, and did a bit of reading, and but there wasn't much out there, and at the same time, I didn't really know what to expect and what to do. So I could say almost wing it. So we sat down, we did it, and so anyways, we talked with the kids, and the kids actually took it pretty well, a lot better than us, I would say, a lot better than me. So I was really thinking the worst case scenario for them, but it was the toughest part was really for me, and so that was also a very tough moment. I mean. So from there, I mean, we had a discussion and we said, okay, so what happens after that? So obviously we had to sit down and come up with, okay, now I can't stay here. So it was decided that I would find an apartment, uh, and again, take it from there. I wasn't sure where was going, but to read a bit more about it. So I started looking for an apartment, and at the moment, it was something new. Obviously, I had been married for almost 20 years, so it was a quite a long time. And looking for apartments and starting over is not something you expect you'll do and once again. So all of a sudden you're there, and it's almost like you start from zero, right? So you have to look, okay, I need a place to live. Luckily I had my job, so that's okay. But now the kids, how the kids will play in there, and as well, money wise, how will I manage to do this, and how we will manage with the house and a new apartment and things like that. So the more I was going over the weeks, the more things I was starting to think about, and kind of writing down a bit what had to be done. And I actually sat down as well to put the numbers together, because all of a sudden I had to get an apartment and I had a house. There was still a mortgage to pay, and all this stuff. And all of a sudden, your one life actually becomes two. everything gets double at that point, I guess. And all the decision you make and everything you think about, it's times two. Money times two, kids times two. How does it work with you, with your wife, houses, pretty much everything. So that was something quite big. And at the beginning, like I said, I wish I would have done a bit more research. But you start just sitting down and putting things together and say, "Ooh, that's not as easy as I thought," and maybe I should have put a bit more thought on that. So the first thing we did is we decided to go for mediation, and that was the first thing people were saying: go to mediation, try to get. And we thought that it would be friendly enough to come up with an agreement. So that didn't work to do well. We went through two mediators actually, and the more I was going to the first, I would say, couple of months, is I realized that the discussion we had when we sat down quickly changed when it became real. I mean, in your head, you have a lot of things you can imagine and you discuss, and it's kind of the perfect scenario. But when you start sitting down and discussing and thinking about things, I mean, it changes from both sides. And it wasn't as easy as I thought it would be. And it got more difficult because, like, I was working, my wife wasn't working. All of a sudden, like I said, there's two lives to pay, and now everybody kind of realized what's happening, and everybody's kind of pulling a bit the cover on their side as well. So it was very, as much as I was a bit, I wouldn't say confused, but kind of didn't really know what was happening during that time. I guess maybe a feeling of panic started to quickly come upon me, I guess, and seeing if that was the right decision to make and if I could do it. And so that was, I would say, probably the first few months after the decision to separate. So that was the first part, and obviously after that, you know, start looking for a place to live, brought my kids, tried to involve the kids as much as possible in everything. They were aware what was happening. They knew, and like they understood too. I think they saw it on their side as well. Like I said before, when we announced to them, it wasn't really a surprise because they even told us that we saw where it was going, and it was definitely not a surprise. So after that, started to get finding a place to live, new lifestyle. Like I said before, everything times two, but at the same time, everybody has to readjust everywhere. So it was a tough moment, a tough time, tough few months until you kind of get a bit into the routine of, okay, I have my place. She has the house there. The kids are adapted. They go to school and everything else. So I would say that was probably the first 6 months after the separation, the decision to separate. The next big thing was the agreement. So obviously we talked and everything. And like I said, it became a bit stressful and put some numbers together and trying to make it work with mediator. So I guess the other moment was to come up with an agreement, which took, on my side, took I would say probably a few years.
Wow, a few years.
Yeah, I would say it took probably almost 2 years, and it started friendly. Like I said, we tried the agreement with mediation. That didn't work. Uh, I tried on my side because obviously it's always the first thing you think about is like, I want to save on lawyers. I want to save
Yeah.
on everything. So you try to do as much as you can on your side.
Were you living
Uh,
in Canada at that time?
yeah, we always lived in Canada, pretty much always live in Canada.
Okay.
Pretty much my whole life, except a couple of years for work. So we're both living here in Montreal. And so yeah, getting the agreement and getting what we want and everything else, and everybody, I guess, greed started to get in there, right? So and on my side, the big issue that um, here in Canada, I guess it's 50-50. After a year, you live together or you're married. I mean, basically, after a year you're together, you're almost considered married, except if you have like things under your name. But
Mhm.
so it's very, very 50-50. And like I said, my wife hadn't worked for a long time. It was a decision. Uh, Actually, we discussed about it when the kids were younger. She wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. So it was really a kind of a common decision that I would pretty much work and she would stay at home. She had jobs here and there over the years, but So I think what happened when we started looking at agreement, she actually was her turn. She really started panicking and realizing that she didn't have a job, and so even with the 50-50 wasn't enough. And so obviously I had to pay spousal support on top of child support because of that. So a lot of things started to the demands were really exceeding what I think was fair. So at that point, to get to the agreement, that's where I decided. And at one point, what's happening too, I was still paying everything, both sides, like my apartment and everything on my side, and also the house and everything on my wife's side. And it was actually pretty stressful on that front because a lot of money is basically you again, like I said at the beginning, is times two everything. So it's a big stress, like monetary as well. So what was happening is a lot of things were dragging. That's why it took 2 years too. It's not just 2 years of fighting. It's just a lot of things were dragging after the mediation and when the mediation didn't work. So I made a decision to go see a lawyer finally and go the lawyer path. And that was probably the best decision that I made.
Mm.
I mean, I was avoiding it, but and I think we talked about it before too. A lot of people try to avoid that and keep it towards the end. I mean, if you're friendly and you can get an agreement quickly, it's fine. But if it drags and drags and drags for months and years, basically the cost, of what you pay versus what you pay the lawyer, uh, it's almost the same. So I got a lawyer, and things started speeding up. And finally, like I said, after 2 years, we got to an agreement. Wasn't easy, but at least something was signed. So that was my second, kind of, I guess, the second 6 months that was starting after the agreement. Um, that one, as opposed to the first one, was really happy. After all those years, obviously, all the work, not necessarily happy because of the agreement, and now I came out from the agreement. That maybe not. And at the end, it was so long that maybe I conceded a lot of things because it had to end at one point. But happy that it was over and I could go forward on that front.
That's a wrap on another episode of Divorce the First 6 Months. Don't forget to hit subscribe for more insights. Take care.